Hi there folks. About a year and a half ago I posted a video on this detachable magazine conversion kit, and this is from Legacy Sports International, and this particular kit of course is to fit a Remington 700, and this one is in 223. Now you replace your original bottom metal with the kit, and basically you take off these parts here from your original Remington bottom metal, the magazine box, trigger guard, follower, spring, floor plate, all that stuff comes directly off, and this unit fits on in its place, to giving you a detachable box magazine. So I've done a video on installing this particular unit. I'll put a link to it in the description. Anyway, I've had about a year and a half of experience with this particular unit, so I figured it was time to do a follow-up, and perhaps we'll put in a bit of shooting footage to see this thing in action. The rifle shipped with this particular magazine, which is labeled as being a 5-rounder. However, you can remove the internal block that's in here quite easily and turn it into a 10-rounder. And I purchased an additional 10-round magazine. You can see this one's actually marked 10 rounds. And so I've got two magazines. Luckily for me, I purchased the spare magazine from the local retailer about a week before the place burnt right to the ground, so my local supply of spare mags kind of went up in flames, unfortunately. However, of course, you can buy these magazine conversion kits and spare magazines from lots of different suppliers online and in gun shops and so forth. Now, after posting that original video, I've had a few comments over time about it. A few people have commented that they've installed these units and they've had issues with basically the plastic cracking, and that does not surprise me at all. You can see that there's not a lot of material down here where the screws go in, both fore and aft. These trigger guards, the original Remington trigger guards, were designed to be made out of metal. It's either aluminum or die-cast zinc material. And making the same component out of a plastic leads them to be perhaps a little bit fragile. The instructions do specify to torque these to a specific inch-pound rating, and I think if you did that, you won't have any problems cracking that. You have to be careful. You can over-tighten these, and I could see how you could easily split that. I have not had any problems. I tightened them up reasonably snug, but I didn't overdo it. The overall construction is, of course, plastic. It seems to be fairly sturdy, but I don't think I'd want to abuse it. It's, you know, it is what it is. It's not a metal part. It's not a real thick plastic, because they're basically replicating the contour of the original Remington part. So, you know, at least in the trigger guard, and they have to match the inletting. So, probably a little bit fragile for some people, but this is a kind of a range rifle, so I can treat it with you know, a certain amount of caution, and it's survived fairly well. The magazines, as far as reliability and feeding goes, they have worked quite well for me. They're very smooth feeding. I've had no problems with them. The only real issue I would say with these is that the magazine actually ends up accepting a shorter cartridge length with the conversion kit than it did with the original Remington bottom metal, which is unfortunate because they basically took a 308 length magazine and shortened it. You can see this solid piece on the back. They had the opportunity to make this magazine quite a bit longer, and for some odd reason they shortened it up significantly. I think it would have fed just as well if they had made the whole thing available for cartridge length, which would have been nice if you were shooting heavier bullets seated further out. But if we measure this, see if we can get this sort of halfway close. If we measure the interior length of this thing, it will take a cartridge that is, what's it, 3.0, yeah, 10, we'll call it, just for the sake of rounding. If we look at the magazine box that comes with the original Remington setup, and we measure that one, you can see that it actually goes 3.0, well, close to 3.070. So there's a significant difference in the length of the cartridge that you can load, which may or may not have an effect on accuracy with the individual bullet that you're using. But like I said, that is kind of unfortunate that these magazines will take a shorter round than these ones will. And these are even blocked off from their original length too, because they've got this piece put in the back to adapt them from the original sort of 308 length magazine well that they were set up for. So that's sort of the one downside that I can think of with these magazines is that reduced overall length. Like I said, it may or may not have an effect upon your individual reloads. If you're shooting factory ammunition, you shouldn't have any problems because these are certainly long enough to accept any SAMI spec length 223 cartridge without problems. There's very little difference in these 5 and 10 rounders. I'm not even going to bother taking them apart. Internally, there's a very minor difference in the way the floor plates are set up. One has a little bit different retainer in the bottom to hold a plastic block to reduce it to 5 rounds, and the other one doesn't. So other than that, the bodies of them are identical, the followers are identical, and it's just the piece inside the floor plate, this little plastic button part. It's really the only part that's different. But anyway, these seem to work quite well. They both of them lock into place without any issue. They snap into place. You kind of get used to the forward magazine catch position, and it's a little unfortunate that they don't sell these units for a little less money than they do, considering their construction. They probably are quite cheap for the manufacturer to make once they've got the tooling set up. I'm sure they could make them very, very cheaply, but obviously they're trying to make some money on them. And anyway, you can decide whether you think the asking price of these is worth it or not. There is another brand of detachable bottom magazine system which uses these magazines but modified. It doesn't, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but basically there's another outfit that uses this magazine modified, but they use a metal trigger guard and catch system. So that's another option that's out there. There are a few other options for converting these to a detachable magazine system, and I think this is still the cheapest one you can get. There are two main reasons to have a detachable magazine conversion kit for your Remington, and the first one is the ease and rapidity of unloading to make the rifle safe, which is great if you're on a range. If you need to unload, pop the magazine out, open the bolt, and the gun is clear. It's also great if you're hunting, if you're getting in and out of vehicles. You can unload the rifle much more quickly and reload it much more quickly, which is a definite advantage over the original fixed magazine. The second thing is the additional capacity and the quick reload. Me and some of the lads I shoot with, we do some matches with moving targets and pop-up targets and so forth, and the ability to have a rifle that holds 10 shots as opposed to 5 is great. We do some quick, quick target presentations, moving target presentations, and now that more people have this sort of a setup, it's possible for us to do other things, have matches that involve more than 10 shots at 5 or 10 shots at a time. If you got a couple of these, you get 20 rounds on tap, which is a reasonable amount of shooting. Anyway, I guess that's enough rambling about this. I'll cut into a little bit of footage that I did last fall, and it was a little bit of a shoot we were doing. Had some moving targets, so you'll see me kind of hunting for the target. But it shows how well the rifle runs with this system. And anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll talk to you later.